ChoiceScript is a programming language for creating phone-friendly interactive stories, and this video introduces how to use the ChoiceScript integrated development environment to make those games. I'm Dennis Jerz. I teach English at Seton Hill University, and I'm creating this video series for the Computers and Writing 2023 conference. If you'd like an overview of exactly what a ChoiceScript game is like, see the previous video in this series, Part 0. Here in Part 1, we're going to get familiar with the ChoiceScript IDE, which is what we're looking at right here, and we'll create a brief ChoiceScript game. You can download the ChoiceScript IDE for free. Here's the GitHub repository for ChoiceScript IDE. If you want to check the link in the description, it'll take you to a page where you can jump right to this page. There's the URL if you'd like to go directly there. The version with 64 in it is for more recent Windows machines. That's for older Windows machines. And of course, the Mac version is right here. And you would just download and install this file just like you would any other program. Now, if you're already familiar with coding, you might want to jump right ahead to Part 2, where I'll review all the main points that I cover here in Part 1. So you could skip ahead if you would like. For now, I'm going to click this eyeball icon to hide that I was working on previously. I'm going to click the plus sign. I'm going to create a new project. Part 1. Now, the integrated development environment shows all your project files here on the left. There's a text editing area here in the middle, and here's a panel on the right where when we run the game, we'll see it. You can also check error messages. There's some settings to change, a dictionary, some help tutorials if you are want to jump ahead and take a look at some more advanced templates. But for now, I'm just going to go ahead and play this game. And, nothing really happens. We have the title, Part 1. We see that. Author, Jerz, that's kind of entered by default. The comment command, that's just a personal note that the programmer is leaving to any humans who are reading the code. And then this command finish says we're done. Now, every ChoiceScript game needs a file called ChoiceScript stats, and that's added by default. And it's blank for now, and we're just going to leave it a blank for this particular lesson. But we also have this startup page, which at present has these 4 lines I've just walked you through. Clicking this triangle runs the program over again from the beginning, but as you know, there's not a whole lot to do here. So if we add some text right here below the comment command, you might expect that when you push restart, and we get this confirmation, nice colorful confirmation box, that would incorporate your changes. But, well, it did not. What we need to do is to tell the IDE to generate a new version of this game to run. And we do that by pushing this triangle. And, we get a warning. Okay, all this means is I forgot to save the changes. I'm going to cancel out of that box and see this little red icon here. I click that to save it. And now, when I push play, we run it, and here we see this text that I added now displays properly. Notice that this, your code goes here, does not appear in the game panel at all. That's the player will never see anything that's marked as a comment. Try to keep your narrative short, okay? So, and here we go. Get rid of those stray characters, and okay, weary from your travels, you find your way to the nearest inn. And ChoiceScript is all about choices. So the most important command we'll need to know is the command choice. I'm going to give them some choices. I'm going to ask the innkeeper for a night's lodging. I'm going to hit the backspace to line up the tabs. Tabs are actually quite significant in ChoiceScript. So there has to be a tab here before each choice. That's going to throw an error message, and the color will change when ChoiceScript is happy. if you're running down a list of options and you see, the colors aren't consistent, there's probably a proofreading error of some sort. So let's remember to save the work and push play. And what's this? We get new issue with project part 1. What the heck does that mean? Okay, so we get a line 9 of startup expected choice body. Well, that's not a terribly helpful error message, but I can tell you what the problem is here. Instead of waiting to the end of the file to finish, I'm going to cut this command finish. I'm going to add it here underneath the hashtag. And notice here I am at the end of this line. I hit enter and the IDE indents for me properly. It doesn't always get the indentation right, but this is the proper thing that you want. We have the command choice, we have a tab, the hashed sign, and then the text of what the choice is going to be, then a second indented tab, and then we have the command for what's going to happen. All that's going to happen now is we're going to end the game, whatever choice the player makes. But we'll, this is a start. We'll build upon it. So let's save this, push the play button, and now we get this message. We get a choice. We have 2 options, and no matter what we pick, the story ends, and we can start over again, and that's about all we can do. It's still a very short story. Well, we don't get any error messages, but it's hardly an engaging story if it ends that quickly. Let's at least let the player know what happens after each choice. So before we finish, I'm going to add this message that you negotiate a fair price and head to your room. You negotiate a fair price and head to your room, and I'm going to hit the tab key to line up that hierarchy again. Insert it. I'm going to copy it from another file. I'm going to insert that. If I hit enter, that should line it up perfectly nicely. So again, this looks like it will at least now, when I save and push play again, now when I ask the innkeeper for a night's lodging, I at least get a message of what happens after I made my choice. The game ends so quickly after that message is displayed. It's even less effective than it could be. But let's turn a visit to an inn. Instead of like a one-shot deal that ends the game depending on which choice that you make, let's make it a repeating loop. And we'll do that by adding a in options. It could be anything, but instead of finish, let's say in options and all right, so save this, run this, and okay, so hooray, we asked the innkeeper for a night's lodging, and we get back to this list. Let's try the rangers near the fire, and did you notice that while I was typing? We get an error message, bad label in options. This text in dash options is not identical to in underscore options, so it threw an error. So anyway, I just wanted to show you what happens when we have a typo, tracking down typos, and misaligned spaces where you've forgotten the asterisk, or it's just one indent when it should be 2 indents or whatever. That stuff is kind of mind-boggling, but that is part of programming, and you have to get those details right in order for the program to work. Now, writing a more engaging game means creating a more complex structure. And one way I like to think of a player's choice, I like to think of it as a request to do something. And I like kind of separating the player's request to do something from the game's explanation of whether the player's effort was successful. I'm going to kind of break this up a little bit. I'm going to create some new labels. The label your chamber, and we'll just say, okay, that's nice. All right, and the label we'll need to expand this later and make it more interesting, but we'll do this. And instead of go to in options, we're going to say go to your chamber. And notice there's a little autocomplete that I can select the option from. There we go. Okay, I'm just hitting tab and it's accepting the label that it's recognized, which is a nice little convenient thing. Now we have to kind of reestablish that loop. So go to in options, which will send the program back up here to give us these choices over again. And how about this, just to make it a little bit more easier to orient yourself. Let's just add a little label that indicates that we're in the in common room. Okay, so we save this, we play, and now, and yeah, that spacing is a little wonky. And what we can do is we can sort of force a line break by adding a line break right there in the source code. So now let's run this again, and now we don't have the in common room running on the next line. It's one of the many little quirky ways that you're kind of have to figure out how the spacing works out. Okay, so if we negotiate, ask the innkeeper for a night's lodging, we'll go to your chamber and we should get a good night's sleep. And so let's do that. And whoa, wait a minute. After I get a good night's sleep, for some reason, I'm coming back from an adventure. Why's that? Well, ChoiceScript is actually just like a good computer program. It's doing exactly what I told it to do. And the way ChoiceScript works is that unless I tell it to go to someplace else, it's going to execute lines in a chronological order. And when it finished printing "You Get a Good Night's Sleep," it just kept moving on through the program and started printing the text here, which you and I intuit that we're only supposed to display that text after you've accepted the ranger quest. But ChoiceScript cannot intuit such a thing. We actually have to tell it explicitly that, yep, after you finished here, I do in fact want you to go back up to those in options. And again, this blank line is significant in that, well, let's try. If I don't have that blank line, let's see what happens after I get a good night's sleep. And we ask the innkeeper for a good night's, and we see we have that weird thing that happens again here with that lineup. So let's keep that blank line after the message "You get a good night's sleep." I save this and run it again. Then happily after a good night's sleep, we don't have that problem of text on top of text. So either way, now we have, it's a much nicer rhythm to the game when you have the lines broken up that way. And this bold kind of tells you, it gives you context for what these choices are all about. In fact, how about this? What if I say, and that just gives us, just a tiny little bit more acknowledgement that we're in an environment. As we introduce more and more opportunities to engage, it might be useful to know that it is possible to nest a set of choices within a choice. And here's what I mean by that. After the player chooses to join the Rangers by the fire, instead of automatically sending them on a quest, let's give them a choice. "Greetings, stranger," says one of the Rangers. "Which do you crave more, adventure or riches?" Choice. Okay, now we're going to get an error message. And why is that? It's the same problem that happened previously when we didn't tell ChoiceScript what to do after the player picks a choice. Previously, they automatically went to accepted ranger quest, and we can go ahead and move that here. And it's got to be indented just once. Here, my copying and pasting is causing ChoiceScript to mess up. That's the proper indentation that I want. If I don't come up with something to do here, after this second choice that rejects the adventure, we're going to run and get an error message. So here, why don't I just go ahead and show you. Okay, so again, it's the expected choice body. Again, it's not a terribly helpful explanation, but when you get that expected choice body, the body is the payload that's contained by the choice. So anyway, let's send the player somewhere. And fortunately, we already have a perfectly good place to send them. Let's send them to your chamber, which is already set up to deal with a sleep situation. It'll be a little abrupt if we go right from the Rangers to getting a good night's sleep. So I'm going to add a little bit of context that says you take your leave, locate the innkeeper, and negotiate a fair price for the room. Let me use tab to line that up again. And now that should work. Okay, I'm going to talk to the Grizzled Rangers. I'm going to decline and say I want to go to sleep. I get a good night's sleep. And now I find myself back in the inn. Well, it's a little abrupt because I just spent the night and now I'm back in the room and I have the option to ask the innkeeper for night's lodging. That's a little a little disorienting. But again, it works. I can get a good night's sleep, and I can, let's say I'm going to go on the adventure. There we go, go on the adventure. So anyways, these options all work now, but it's a little bit more complex because I have the opportunity to back out of the Ranger quest if I don't want to. And again, the player has a little bit more agency here because it's not so much once you show any interest whatsoever in the Rangers, suddenly you're committed to a whole adventure. But again, we keep returning to this inn very, abruptly and quickly. Let's slow down that transition just a little bit, kind of to give the player time to register that we spent some time on the quest, or we've spent time sleeping through the night. So instead of just as soon as you enter your chamber, you go to good night's sleep, I'm going to change that a little bit to you settle down for the night. And then I'm going to have a button pop up that you click on in order to sleep. And then you wake up, and then you have another choice. Do you linger at the inn, or do you move on? I'm introducing this go to next section. I'll just call that go to and let's add an option down here, label open road. How would I type that properly? Label, not label. Open road. And that's going to be a very short section that simply just says you take to the road and finish. We can, add more to that later. All right. Similarly, instead of as soon as we launch on the Ranger's quest, it's over, let's at the very least have a page break, which will have a button pop up that says go adventuring. Maybe later we can add code that checks to see whether you are successful and how successful you are. But for now, let's introduce some more choices. Okay, well, we don't need to go to in options. We can leave that one out. Okay, all right, so I think it's probably pretty clear what's happening here. Previously, once you went to your chamber, you automatically finished. You slept and you were done and you were back in the inn. Now there's going to be a pause, and then when you wake up, you'll have a choice. Similarly, instead of as soon as you start out on the ranger quest, you get a static, unchanging, non-interactive message that says you're finished, at least here you have to push a button that says go adventuring. And when you're done adventuring, you can go back to the inn or you can move on. Again, instead of next section, that should be go to open road. Open road. All right, so, all right, well, ordinarily, I would say it's probably a good idea to push play and check your code frequently. I typed quite a lot, and there might be some typos in here. Let's see. All right, well, so far that looks good. Okay, so if I ask the innkeeper for a night's lodging, great. Now we have this page break sleep, and that, again, it just breaks it up a little bit. I wake refreshed, and now instead of just automatically being stuffed back in the inn, I have the choice. Do I stay or do I move on? How about I move on? Okay? And I add this nice little touch. You bid the innkeeper farewell. If we restart this game from the beginning, and let's go on this journey, I'll say, yes, I'm ready for both at every time. I push the Go Adventuring button. Now, maybe instead of moving on for this playthrough, I'll go to the inn. I'll spend the night at the inn. I'll get sleep. And so now I have both pack full of treasure and I'm well rested, so now I'm ready to move on. All right, well, in this video, we began with a very simple scene that used only choice, label, go to, and finish. And we experimented with finessing of emphasis and pacing of the output by using bold formatting and experimenting with line breaks and page breaks, just to control the flow of the story. Now, this one startup file is starting to get a little crowded. So in the next video, we'll reorganize it a bit and we'll start breaking the significant action up across multiple files, which ChoiceScript calls scenes. So anyway, that'll be in part 2 of this video. So I'm Dennis Jerz, and I hope you are enjoying this ChoiceScript workshop, and I hope to see you in part 2.